The force of the subdermal hematoma that had formed on my mom's brain as a result of repeated exposure to high-dose chemotherapy and a reduced platelet count was basically nullifying her ability to move her right side of her body. Through physical therapy, my mom had regained some functionality of her right leg, her right arm, and especially her right hand, but it wasn't enough to allow her to actually leave the hospital bed. Because even with the assistance of the physical therapist or her nurse or a medical assistant or even us, it was too much of a fall risk for her to leave the bed, say to go on a walk around the unit like she did previously, or even to use the restroom. But being bedridden carries its own risk because the person isn't moving, so their blood isn't circulating normally. Their muscles are losing strength every day that they're not being utilized. Bed sores can start forming just due to that pressure from being in the same position day in and day out. And then there's the mental component, like the frustration of always having to rely on another person to help you out because you can't do any of your normal bodily functions by yourself. You're also so claustrophobic in a way because you can't leave your bed. You can't change your position all. You can't go on a walk or go outside. You're just stuck. Focusing in on that first risk related to circulation, anytime that someone is bedridden, the likelihood of them getting a blood clot gets so much higher because they're not moving enough and the blood starts to pool in their body, which then triggers the clotting process leading to blood clots. This is the reason why my mom's medical team insisted on her wearing anti-clotting massagers around her lower legs for as much time as she could tolerate while she was bedridden. The device basically just surrounded my mom's lower legs and just asserted that constant kneading motion to prevent any blood from pooling. On the surface level, the thought of getting a prolonged massage seems to be the ideal, right? But in reality, it's a nightmare. It's not like the person who is bedridden has just run 5 miles and they're coming back and they want their swollen and strained and tense legs to be massaged out and they get that relief and that joy from that. No, they're just in a bed and their legs are swollen, but for a completely different reason. And those legs are just getting prodded and squeezed and pressures going in and out on them constantly. It is not a joyous thing like a normal massage. It is just a perpetual annoyance. At the time, I didn't realize how dangerous blood clots could actually be. I knew that they were bad, and I knew that you would always try to avoid them, especially if you're going on long flights and you need to wear those funky socks just to make sure that you're getting enough circulation and so one doesn't form. But I always thought that they were easily resolvable and that they wouldn't do any major damage. But I couldn't have been more wrong at that time. I would learn in April of 2020 just how devastating blood clots can be, because that is when my brother Lance's life was taken away due to one. About a month and a half prior, right around when the pandemic was starting, my brother was driving home on his motorcycle. It was at night. He had worked a long shift. He was a master mechanic at Harley Davidson. And as he was going through an intersection, a van illegally took a left turn and slammed into him. Him and his bike flew off the road. Both were mangled. He was wearing a helmet though, so thankfully he survived that impact, but he was not in any position to move because he had broken so many bones in his body. The van drove away, so it was a hit and run. After a little bit, another car passed by, saw the crumpled up bike, and my brother called 911, an ambulance came. Thankfully, he was still alive because he had been wearing a helmet. They took him to the emergency room, immediately started operating on him. And then over the next couple of days, they kept doing more and more surgeries because he had just broken so many bones in his body. After he was transferred home from the ICU, he was pretty much bedridden just due to the extent of the damage that had been done and how much recovery needed to happen before he could start functioning properly. And because he wasn't under that constant supervised medical care like my mom was during her hospitalization, he wasn't getting things like anti-clotting massagers. My sister-in-law and her daughter were doing the best that they could to take care of him, but it's so hard, especially considering how big my brother was. He was about my height, but a lot bigger in stature. And my sister-in-law is like 5 foot tall. It's really hard when you are a family caregiver looking after a loved one and you can't help to move that big of a person around as much as they need to. We now know that the weeks when he was pretty stationary is when a blood clot formed in his groin. And it was actually when he started doing the physical therapy to become mobile again that the blood clot had dislodged and moved directly up to his heart and stopped it. And he had fainted in that moment when it happened, but then kind of woke back up. And so they thought he was okay. But then soon after, he fainted again. And by the time that the ambulance came and took him to the emergency room, he had already passed away. It happened that quickly. I'm going to release a video later on in the book that talks about the difference between gradually losing a loved one versus losing one instantly and unexpectedly. But the most important thing to know in this moment is that blood clots can be incredibly serious. They can kill someone. And so if your loved one or if you are bedridden at any point, make sure to pay attention to massagers like my mom had or anything that gets blood circulating, because the last thing you want is a blood clot to form. I'll be releasing another video tomorrow, August 7th, where I'll be talking about the restorative power of getting a clear timeline when you're going through treatment. So hit subscribe, leave any questions in the comments. The link to the book is in the description, and I will see you all tomorrow.